Thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, Peter. Good to see you. Good to be here.
Yeah, great. I really appreciate you taking the time. So you've got a lot of things going on. First of all, of course, we want to cover the new Black Swan album. And before I divulge in that, on a side note, I just want to cover a personal satisfaction I got with your solo album last year, A View from the Inside.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
I was so glad to see you included Black Magic because I had
Some-
that the Guitars That Rule the World compilation back in, was it 90 or 91?
89.
Yeah.
Or I think it was 89. Maybe it was 91.
It might have one of those. Such a great area, but ever since I always thought it was a great song, and I know you've kept that as part of your repertoire over the years, but it's cool to give that an update, and it really it shows that it's not locked in time. Like it really updated well. It sounds, it doesn't sound like it's from 30 years ago. Like it stays current.
I just always wanted real drum sounds on that. I did it like in a room the size of a closet.
Right.
And with a tiny little Alesis drum machine this big, so I always wondered what it would sound like with real drums. And that one came out good. I also did Cutting Loose, which was a song from my instructional video that for years people have said, what is that song?
Right.
It was just a thing that I wrote for the instructional video, but it's a very cool riff. But people didn't like the remake of it because I did a different solo. And the solo on the original, it was so improvisational that I kind of wrote something for the album and people hated it because they're used to the one that's on the video, which is, in hindsight, much better.
Well, as a listener, I can tell you listeners are just as capable of getting demoitis as musicians are.
Yeah,
so,
and they all did. And I understood why. I tried something different with a whammy pedal and a weird noise, and it wasn't as cool as just the off-the-cuff improv that was on the video. So I learned from that. But everyone seemed to dig that record. It's actually sold really well, especially for an instrumental record. And I got that out of my system. I've been wanting to do that ever since Winger kind of disbanded for that small amount of time. I figured, I'll be like a Joe Satriani kind of guy and just do instrumental stuff and not have to worry about a singer and just tour, on playing guitar. But, I think if I do another record, it'll be with vocal.
Yeah, it makes sense. But now getting to the Black Swan, what's the significance, if any, behind the title, Generation Mind?
Oh, God, don't ask me. I don't even know what it means. It's completely, Robin writes all the lyrics and melodies.
Right.
Yeah, I just write the music. I write all the music.
It's funny, speaking of Robin, man, his pipes have held up so well.
I know. It's really something. And he sings when we're doing those videos. So you get to hear him do it live when I'm standing next to him and we're doing the videos. It's spot on, just spot on. If we ever played live, it would be great because all four of us sing. Even Matt Starr apparently has an awesome voice. So, we'd be able to pull that off.
And Jeff Pilson has a great voice too.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Jeff Pilson's one of those jack of all trades and master of all that a lot of people don't realize how versatile he is.
Oh yeah, he plays keyboards and he studied music at college, and that's why he's the music director at Foreigner. He's a really good arranger. See, the great thing is that I do this one thing really well, and I don't do anything really well. I was telling another guy, I went to an aptitude test at Johnson O'Connor in Washington, D.C. My father would send all of his employees there to see where he should place them in his company before he'd hire them, to see where their aptitudes lied. And so he took me there just to see, what the deal is with me. And after I took all these tests, they said, Mr. Beach, your son has absolutely no aptitudes in anything whatsoever except one thing. Music. And it was, like 98% in rhythm and 99.5% in melody. And it was obvious that, that's had to be my path. And he was really supportive after that. But I write guitar riffs really well. And I've gotten better at arranging, but nothing like Jeff Pilson. So I wrote 90% of the music to the album, but I couldn't have done it without Jeff Pilson because I sit in a room with him and I'll have a verse riff. I come in with like 30 riffs. I'll have a verse riff and he'll say, okay, we need a pre-chorus. and it can be in the key of D or the key of F. And I'll be like, well, how's this? And he'll say, no. And I'll go, what about this? And he'll say, yes, that's it. And we end up writing a song every day, writing and recording a song every day. This album and the last album took 10 days to write. So, I mean, I knew when I was approached to do it that it was really exciting right from the beginning, because Jeff and I were a proven writing team on Erase a Slate with Dokken, which is a really good Dokken record.
It is.
Yeah, so I felt confident right from the get-go that we were going to have a strong writing situation and get some great songs.
Do you think your writing relationship with him for Black Swan and Erase a Slate, is that similar to how you bounce off of Kip?
Very similar. It's almost identical, you know, and that's how we do it. And you know, I need a collaborator. And I wrote an album all by myself, Masquerade, in 2003, that I'm really proud of, but it took me years without anyone to bounce it off of, you know, rather than 10 days.
Right.
Yeah, it was incredibly difficult for me. So I work best with a collaborator, and especially a collaborator with a real working knowledge of arranging.
Right. Yeah. Now, for that, like, say, Generation Mind, how are you recording these days? Are you still miking amps? Are you going direct to board?
No, dude, no. You got to mic the amp.
Okay.
In my world, you got to mic the amp. It's for that tone. And he's got an old Marshall that sounds great.
Good.
You know, I sound like me when I play on anything, but I don't know. To me, they still haven't got. It's really close these days. They've got all this new technology that's very, very good, but I can tell the difference right away. You know, and that's why I lug a giant amplifier with me out with Whitesnake. You know.
Are you still using Sir?
I am.
Okay. When you started with them, were they still Pensa Sir, or were they just Sir by then?
Well, I bought my first Pensa Sir in 1986 when I was doing the Twisted Sister record. And I brought it in, and Dee Schneider said it looked like a coffee table. But I fell in love with that guitar.
Pointy enough.
Well, that's why I made it pointier for the Voyager with Ibanez. You know, but that was the basis for every Reb Beach model that there's ever been. And all of my guitars are, you know, kind of, you know, same wood. You know, I love the sound, love the feel and all that. So.
Right. Yeah, definitely. They're definitely beautiful guitars. So I was assuming that, I guess most of this album is you and Jeff bouncing off each other, and then Robin's coming in with the melodies and the lyrics and all the vocal stuff. Now, how much, you're all seasoned pros, Matt included, how much bouncing back and veto power is there? Like, I mean, nobody's telling Jeff Pilson how to play bass or Rob McCauley how to sing, but are you guys saying, hey, I don't love where you went with that, try, you know, that, try maybe this instead, or are you doing
Absolutely. I sang melodies. I would change notes of Robin's melodies. You know, not a lot, but I know that Jeff worked with Robin as well on the melodies to help him out, you know, when something would rub, or there was, you know, if you go up on the note instead of go down, it's hookier. Right. And so I did some vocals here on, you know, 4 or 5 of the songs to let them know. And they used a lot of my ideas, which was great. But no, we definitely love to have each other's input and respect each other's opinions very much. But Jeff gets the final word.
Okay. Gotcha. Did it differ any from the first album?
It's better.
Better.
Well, it's a better record. I don't know if have you heard it?
I've heard the first 2 songs. That's
the tip of the iceberg.
I'm looking forward to it. Yeah.
The thing is, you know, it was all the pressure was on me to beat that record, you know, and it starts with the guitar riff, and a chorus, and when I'm writing these riffs, the first thing I do is sing over them, and if they're not good to sing over, then I toss them.
Okay.
So I come in with 30 ideas, and you know, we just hone those ideas with Robin in mind.
Gotcha. Gotcha. The
but I forget what the question was. What was the question?
What was the Battle of Hastings? No, I don't.
No, it was about the first record and
I was just thinking, how did the process differ, or was it? Yeah, like
no, it's exactly the same process.
Just a better gelling, maybe. I mean,
no, we had more of a vision of what Black Swan was. We had no path at all, to veto stuff and to say no, that's not right. That's not right. I brought in some stuff that was way too heavy, way too dark. Like death medley. And Jeff now has this vision of what Black Swan is, and was really helpful, I think, to make this a stronger record.
Yeah, well, and you have a great palette as far as your riff work goes. Like something like early days, like 17, where it's real intricate, I almost liken it to the intro to the song 5150, just real busy, and then you got just heavy, just plodding riffs like Junkyard Dog off Pole.
Yeah.
You're like dun, dun, dun.
Yeah.
That the beginning of Eagles Fly struck me as that you're sort of just letting that chord ring out a little bit. So you have a good sense of spicing up and not making it like I have one type of riff style. You tend to spread it out pretty well.
I like to make it a little more progressive, but with nice melodies over it.
I wanted to ask you about that in your songwriting process. You do have those kind of fusion prog chops. When you're writing, say for something more, I hate to say streamlined, but focused is like just rock, like Black Swan or Dokken. When you're coming up with a riff, like you can probably say, oh, I can take this in 10 different places and I can change keys or make this drawn out. But do you consciously say like, okay, here's the riff I'm coming up with. I need to keep this to a 4-bar riff and say like I need to hone this down to its essentials to not have it be too proggy or complicated, or is that a conscious thought or not?
Oh hell yeah, it happens a lot. That's a big part of it. I'll come in with a verse, pre-chorus, chorus. It's never finished. It's always at most it'll be that, and I know Jeff won't like this. I know Jeff won't like this because Robin that's going to be weird for Robin. So I make it as open to melodies as possible, but it still has to be cool. It still has to be a cool riff.
Right.
So like I said, I sing over everything, and it's very painstaking to get 3 sections that work well together, that work like a pop 80s rock song where the verse is here, pre-chorus goes up a notch, chorus is your payoff. Has to be like that.
Right. And then you got a couple of cool middle 8 section or something, and yeah.
That's another thing Black Swan does and Winger does, and we ripped off the idea from Winger. I said, with Winger, Jeff, we always write another section for the solo section. Very rarely do we solo over the chorus. And he said, I want to do that too. So we do. That's a conscious effort. And some of the solo sections are like cooler than the whole song.
Yeah, I mean, that's awesome. I asked Robin this a couple years ago, and I know this might be hard to say yes or no to, but with their schedules and like Whitesnake and all that stuff, do you foresee any possibility of touring for this?
Yeah, we've been asked that, and there's a bunch of different factors.
Yeah.
In America, who's going to pay Black Swan to play their club?
Right.
No one's really heard of Black Swan.
Right.
Which is too bad, but that's the way it is here. These albums come out, and 3 weeks later, there's 10 other albums on the label. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. Now in Europe, we would do better, but clubs in Europe don't pay anything. You'd have to fly us out there. We'd have to rehearse for a good long time, for 6 days in a rehearsal studio, which costs money. Then there's everybody's schedule. Pilsen tours with Foreigner, like Alice Cooper. I mean, they're just always touring. Right. So it's not only a schedule thing. It's kind of like, is it worth it?
No, I totally get that.
Frontiers does a thing every year. They haven't since the pandemic, but They do a Frontiers Festival
Hmm.
where I'm sure they'll ask us to play, which would be a pain in the butt. But of course, we would try to do it.
Yeah, at some point, it almost gets to the point where a Frontiers Festival, every band playing is already played with everybody else. You're like, you get in the band like, oh yeah, I was in a band with Doug Pinnick already, and then it's like you already know everybody.
Winger just did a really interesting thing. You can Google it. Just Google Winger Medley.
Okay.
And we did a medley of all of the bands that we've been in. So, Whitesnake, Doc, and Alan Parsons, Jefferson Starship,
Right.
Journey. And so, when Kip suggested this, I said, well, I'll put it together. I can do that. I got more free time than Kip with his symphony and all that.
Right.
So I can do that here in my little studio. And it was a lot harder than I thought because it ended up being 9 minutes long, which is like, no, it can't be 9 minutes long. So we had to just do like a verse and chorus of each song. It took me a while to get all the keys right and everything, but it came out really well. And now people they go crazy for it. I mean, we couldn't believe it. We played this on the Monsters of Rock cruise, and we didn't know how it would be perceived. And we brought the house down. Like, I have not seen an audience go crazy like that in many years. I mean,
cool.
They were just an okay audience, but we played that. Man, it was incredible. So now we have to do it for the rest of our lives.
I had a couple questions from listeners that I put out there that I was going to be talking to you, and they wanted to ask you a few things. I got two I picked. One guy, Dave, asked, is there any guitar technique that you wish you were better at?
Yeah, picking every note.
Okay.
I went to Berklee College of Music for only 2 semesters. At that time, they were very jazz oriented, and they did not like what I was doing. Told me I was doing everything wrong. Don't do that finger tapping thing you do. You're holding the pick wrong. You're sitting wrong. And I was, a hungry kid. And I left after 2 semesters, much to my father's dismay, who paid, $30,000 or whatever. And so they hated me there, but then they put me on the cover of their magazine when Winger came out, Reb Beach, graduate of Berklee, even though I only went for 2 semesters.
Yeah, it's funny how you make it and suddenly the alumni status is
yeah. I wish that I could go, like picking every note like that. I dig the way that sounds like a Steve Morse kind of thing,
Yeah.
But I couldn't do it. So I invented my own way of doing it. Also, I do wish that I could read music. One gig I didn't get because I couldn't read music was Hall & Oates. I auditioned for Hall & Oates, and I learned it. They sent me all these charts, and I just learned it by ear. And went in and played it, and they said, "Oh, that one chord you're playing is right, but it's the wrong inversion of the chord. You actually play it up here." And I'm like, I don't know that chord. I'd have to learn that chord. I can't just play that chord right now because it's just a weird chord for me. And I didn't get the gig. Luckily, 3 months later, I got Whitesnake, and I saw all those guys in Hall & Oates in an elevator, and they're like, "Reb, you got Whitesnake. You're so lucky, man." It's like, all right, I'm lucky.
Well, you talk about picking every note, though. I always thought what you were doing with tapping was interesting because he changed it up. But the early albums, a lot of Eddie's tapping was to draw attention to the fact that it was an impossible stretch. Right? That was what was mystifying about it at first. Was how are you fretting the 2nd, 5th, and 12th fret? But you came out with where you were tapping closer, and you were almost, in my mind, just like making a more fluid legato style out of it. You're kind of doing like, almost more of an Alan Holdsworth method of just making the notes flow without that pick attack. That's what I got from it back then.
I was really into Holdsworth, not so much his music. I got turned on to Holdsworth by what he did with Jean-Luc Ponty, which was very inside
like
fusion.
Enigmatic Oceans. And
Exactly. This guy knows his stuff very good, Peter. Awesome. And so that's how I got turned on to him. And so I think that's just kind of how the sound turned out.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to go up a scale, but I couldn't pick every note. So I got the idea to tap from Van Halen, but I didn't learn any Van Halen licks. I just went ahead and did my own thing, and invented a way to go up using this finger, my ring finger, to pluck the next string, up, like from the A string, the D string, I pluck it, rather than hammer with my first finger, which I never do. Who hammers with their first finger? So that's how it worked out for me. And it ends up sounding really Alan Holdsworthy, legato-y. Yeah. But Alan Holdsworth does it with one giant hand, it's sick.
Yeah. I wish I'd started this. I started interviewing people maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and I wish it was right after Alan died. And I really wish I'd gotten the game early enough to talk to him. Would just be great. I mean,
I met him, and he was so nice, so down to earth.
Okay. So Jeff asked a question: what it was like stepping in Lynch's shoes for Dokken. Because you're both virtuosos, but you got very different styles, at least lead-wise.
I wasn't nearly as cool as George Lynch, and it was a huge undertaking for me, and I was very nervous about it. The first thing that happened was I came in and listened to the songs that they had, mm-hmm. and they were not Dokken songs. It was more Beatles. It was very Beatlesy, mm-hmm. and I'm like, hold it, like. No, it's Dokken. Come on, guys. We need a dum-dum-dum, dum-dum-dum. They had, erase the slate. It was like a country song, I'm like, no, erase the slate needs to be the dum-dum-dum. It needs to be Kiss of Death, man. Yeah. So I had this energy, and they were all tired and sick of Dokken. And, I came in and I was like, no, you're Dokken. Come on. And so Jeff got all pumped, and he and I got together and we wrote Dokken songs. So that helped. Because they were going in kind of like a 90s, Dysfunctional was a great record, but it was a different sound for mm-hmm. them, So I was really into getting back to the roots, talking about if I was going to be involved. And then, the solo thing, I worked really hard on the solos. I knew Erase the Slate had to be a killer solo, being the first song on the album. Worked really hard on that. And, ultimately came out with a very good Dokken record. The first show I did with Dokken, everyone was expecting George Lynch, and I got a big 80s Air Jordan pump sneaker right in my face. Boom! You suck! it was bad, that first show. But I won them over at that first show because I played all the solos exactly like they were on the record. And obviously not with George's style, but I played all the right notes. So I gradually, during that hour and a half, won the people over because they weren't used to hearing the solos live, because George just improvised when he would play the solos, which was also awesome. But, people dig hearing the solo on the record. And that's why with Winger, I play all the solos from the record. Because I saw Leonard Skinner, and I'll never forget them doing all the solos from the record, and listening to the audience get louder and louder as the solo was going on. This was cool to me because it brought attention to the solo, the guitar solo.
Yeah, that's very true. I sometimes they'll pull off something improvising that I think is cool, but I definitely want to hear at least the key components of the solo. It's like we were going back to the demo-itis. The listener gets used to what they're hearing, and if you in a live setting it all goes by so fast that you can't really register everything in improvisation. That's like you can't even always catch like whether it was good or not because it was all brand new to you in that live consciousness.
Just like when a singer changes the melodies on a popular song, either because it's too high or because he's sick of singing that melody, and people don't like that. They like to sing along and they like to hear it just like the record, really.
It's very true. Let's try to think. I want to make sure everybody knows where to go. The album is out April 8th. I hope I'm getting that right.
That's what I hear.
Okay. Where can people go to pre-order, catch up on what's new or what's going on, any more singles to be released, that kind of thing?
I mean, the Frontiers website, frontiers.it.
Right.
But, Google Black Swan. I want to buy Black Swan.
We'll find it eventually, right? Yeah. Well, I'm certainly looking forward to it. The first album was great, and I'm definitely looking forward to more. And what I hear so far is really good. So
Thanks.
Well, I really appreciate you taking the time, Reb. It's an honor to talk to you, and I'm looking for new music. And anytime you got anything going on, you're welcome back. I'd love to hear more about it.
Oh, thanks, Peter. Love that.
No
yeah,
cool.
It was great. Nice talking to you.
Absolutely, my pleasure. All right, we'll see you.
All right, Peter. Take care.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay.